Today, we're diving into Surah Maryam, the 19th chapter of the Quran. And this is a really special one. It's this beautiful tapestry of incredible stories, unbelievable miracles, and a theological message that just hits with such profound clarity. So let's get right into it. So here's how we're going to break this down. We're going to tackle the stories first, which is how the chapter itself unfolds. We'll start with two absolutely miraculous births and an infant who literally speaks from the cradle. Then we'll look at a prophet's gentle plea to his family. And from there, we'll unpack the huge theological ideas about God, about the day of reckoning, and about the one singular, powerful theme that ties this whole thing together: mercy. You know, the chapter opens not with some grand, sweeping command, but with this incredibly personal, intimate story about divine mercy. It zeroes in on two people, the Prophet Zakariyya and Maryam, or Mary, and two prayers that, let's be honest, seemed completely and utterly impossible. I mean, just listen to this. This is the raw, vulnerable prayer of the Prophet Zakariyya. He's talking to God, totally exposed, laying out his reality. I'm old, my body is failing me, and my wife can't conceive. And yet, even with all that, he asks for a child. He asks for an heir. It's just this incredible act of faith in the face of what looks like a biological dead end. And what happens? A response comes. An angel appears and tells him, your prayer has been answered. Now, even with all his faith, Zakariyya is just floored. He asks, how is this even possible? And the angel's reply is the key to this entire story. The angel says, your Lord says it is easy for me. And that right there sets up a core theme for the whole chapter. God's power operates on a completely different level than our human limitation. What's so fascinating is how the chapter immediately puts Zakariyya's story right next to Maryam's. You see, Zakariyya's miracle, amazing as it was, still worked kind of within the rules of biology. It just overcame them. But Maryam's story? That takes the idea of divine power to a whole new level. It goes completely beyond biology. So the scene shifts to Maryam. She's this devout young woman, secluded in worship, and suddenly an angel appears to her as a perfect man. Of course she's terrified. Her first reaction is to pray for protection. But he's a messenger, and the news he brings is that she's going to have a pure son. Her question is just one of pure logical shock. I mean, how could a virgin who's guarded her chastity have a child? And the answer she gets is the exact same one Zakariyya got. For God, it is easy. But believe it or not, the miraculous birth isn't even the climax of Maryam's story. Nope. The real test, the real miracle, comes when she has to walk back to her community holding a baby that has no earthly father.
So, following God's command, Maryam doesn't say a word when she returns. And her community is just horrified. They accuse her of the worst possible sin, throwing her pious family in her face. Can you even imagine the pressure? And through it all, she stays silent and just points to the baby in her arms. They scoff at her. They say, how are we supposed to talk to a baby in a cradle? And right then, in that moment of intense accusation, the infant Jesus, ʿīsā, performs his very first miracle. He speaks. And he doesn't just make sounds. He delivers a clear, powerful declaration that defends his mother and defines his entire mission. And this speech is so important. Look at what he says. First and foremost, he says, I am a servant of God, not a son. He declares his own prophethood, his duties to God and to his mother, which completely clears her name. It's a miracle that is perfectly designed for that exact moment, silencing all doubt and setting the stage for his entire life. Okay, so from these incredible, jaw-dropping miracles, the chapter then shifts gears a bit. It brings us to a different kind of prophetic story, the story of Ibrahim, or Abraham. And his story really gets to the heart of a different kind of challenge for a prophet. How do you call people away from falsehood, especially when it's your own family? And his approach is just a masterclass in gentle persuasion. Listen to his tone. He keeps calling him, oh, my dear father. He uses pure logic, asking why he would worship statues that can't hear or see. He offers guidance from what he knows, he warns him gently, and he expresses this genuine, heartfelt fear for his father's fate. And how does his father react? With pure rage. He threatens to stone Ibrahim and tells him to just get lost. But Ibrahim's response is what's so incredible. There's no anger, no shouting back. He simply says, peace be upon you. I will ask forgiveness for you from my Lord. He leaves, but he maintains that calm, peaceful attitude and his promise to pray for his dad.
So you have these amazing stories, the births, the struggles of the prophets. You might be thinking these are just standalone tales, right? Well, they're not. They are all building blocks, laying the foundation for the central theological argument that the chapter is about to make, loud and clear. So after establishing Jesus as a prophet who called himself a servant of God, the chapter turns and directly confronts the belief that God has a son. It puts its cards on the table and says, okay, this is the core disagreement we need to talk about.
And to show how serious this is, the text uses this unbelievable cosmic imagery. It's not presented as a simple mistake in theology. No, it's described as a claim so fundamentally wrong, so contrary to the nature of reality, that the entire universe basically recoils in horror from it.
This all boils down to the core Islamic principle of Tawheed, the absolute oneness and uniqueness of God. The argument is that it just doesn't fit for the Creator to have a son, because a son would be part of creation. Instead, every single thing in existence is a servant of God. His power is total. He doesn't reproduce, he just creates with a single word, be, and it is. And think about it. Those miracles at the beginning, the births of Yahya and ʿīsā, they are the ultimate proof of that exact power. So after we have the stories, the prophetic arguments, and this core theological statement, the chapter naturally moves on to the consequences. It asks, okay, so what are the stakes? And it paints this really vivid picture of the day of judgment when everyone is finally held accountable for their beliefs and actions.
Right. This is the logical next step. If this is the truth being presented, then what happens to those who accept it? And what happens to those who reject it? The chapter describes the final inevitable outcome.
And the contrast it paints is just so stark. You have the righteous, who are gathered as an honored delegation to meet the most merciful in paradise. Then you have the criminals, who are driven like a thirsty herd of animals toward the hellfire. The language is so deliberate. It emphasizes honor for the believers and total humiliation for those who turned away from the message. And this brings us to the end, and to what might be the most surprising part of this whole chapter. Because despite all these very serious warnings and the cosmic weight of theological arguments, the entire chapter is wrapped in one single dominant theme. Just look at this number, 16. That's how many times the name Ar-Rahman, or the Most Merciful, shows up in this one chapter. It's everywhere. Zakariyya's prayer is a sign of God's mercy. Maryam takes refuge in the Most Merciful. Ibrahim warns his father about a punishment from the Most Merciful. The righteous are brought to the Most Merciful. It's the central attribute that frames everything. And that leaves us with this final, profound thought to chew on. This chapter draws very clear lines, makes incredibly strong arguments, and gives some very stark warnings. And yet, it chooses to wrap all of that in the name of the Most Merciful. It suggests that maybe everything, the miracles that inspire awe, the prophets who offer guidance, and even the warnings of consequences are, in the end, all expressions of that divine mercy. It's a compassionate guide for humanity. And that really is the heart of Surah Maryam.